Coming up around the HBCU Sports Nation, Coach Prime continues to do his thing as Jackson State rolls to one of the top overall recruiting classes in college football. And also, no excuses this year, NFL. There's no reason for HBCU players not to get drafted, as coming up at the end of January, the HBCU Combine during the Senior Bowl, putting the best and the brightest stars from this year on blast. I'm Mark Gray. The bus is cranked up. We're ready to roll. It's the HBCU Sports Nation, and we're pulling out now.
Black out and move. Ride, come on. Black college, stand up. HBCU.
And what's the deal, boys and girls? Your boy Mark Gray back at it. Remember, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok in a no-twerk zone at The Sports Groove 24/7, 365, computer, smartphone, tablet, however you get your social media groove on. Let's get right to the biggest story in HBCU sports right now that has nothing to do with what's going on the field. The defending SWAC champion Jackson State making big headlines for the numbers of recruits that are making their way as destination stops to Jackson State. And Coach Prime has shocked the world already. Not only did he add a number of ESPN 300 prospects to his 2022 class, he landed the number 58 prospect overall in wide receiver Kevin Coleman. This happened at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. So after playing a game where you lost with 2 million people watching, you get to see one of the prize recruits make his selection. What a big deal that was. But that's only one of the many players that Coach Prime was able to land to come to the state school in the state capital. So what does that mean? Now HBCUs are certainly a destination instead of a rebuild or a pre-stop. And with name, likeness, and image, plus the cultural awareness that goes with being at a black college, the doors are wide opening. And as the layers of this year's recruiting class continue to be pulled, we will notice a lot more blue chip prospects making their way to HBCU schools.
Black out and move. Ride, come on. Black college, stand up. HBCU.
Coming up during the Senior Bowl weekend, there will be no excuses for NFL teams to not say they didn't have an opportunity to see the best players in HBCU football. For the first time ever, an HBCU Combine will be staged during Senior Bowl week. That will be January 28th and 29th in Mobile, Alabama. And some of the top stars of the game who did it big will be invited, such as Alabama A&M quarterback Akil Glass, who did everything to keep the Bulldogs in the hunt in the SWAC this season. And though some may look at his stats as disappointing, many of them are just upset that they weren't able to make it to the championship game. Also from the state of Alabama, running back Ezra Gray from Alabama State, and the SWAC's being represented all over the place by several contributors who did it big throughout the course of their careers. Keep an eye out on Florida A&M's Antoine Collier, Keenan Forbes, who follows in the tradition of great Florida A&M offensive linemen. Can you say Nate Newton? And Keith Corbin, the other wide receiver. Malachi Wideman was so big, people forgot Corbin was just as highly touted a prospect coming in as anybody left on that roster. It figures to be an outstanding exhibition of college football talent on blast. And here's a player that may qualify as sneaky good and under the radar: North Carolina A&T running back Jermaine Martin, who was the dominant offensive player the final 2 years that he was in the MEAC and may have slightly fallen off the grid in his senior year because he's injured. Bottom line is, you look at the productivity that Tariq Cohen from North Carolina A&T gave to the Chicago Bears before he was injured. And some could make a compelling argument to have him as a security blanket for Justin Fields, who's going to make them better this season. We will find out. But Jermaine Martin is certainly one to watch going in and perhaps coming out of the HBCU Combine this year.
1, 2, 3, hit it! Black out and move. Ride, come on! Black college, stand up! HBCU!
Upon further review, just look at me as the proverbial security blanket for Coach Prime and all the other HBCU coaches who now have players who are considering their colleges as more than just second stops or unfortunate destinations. With the unbelievable recruiting class that Jackson State has, and now the world awakening to the cultural awareness and benefits of playing college football, where you grow as a cultural citizen, proud of his African-American heritage, you're seeing a lot more high-end, blue-chip black college recruits making black colleges a destination first. And that is tremendous for the sport. I remember when I first started cutting my teeth, I used to hear coaches say, "We could never get that guy. We just don't have the money." Now you have, thanks to coaches like Coach Prime, Deion Sanders at Jackson State, these players now feel confident about their opportunities to get drafted and play in the NFL. And as we just spoke about earlier in the program, you've got this HBCU Combine during the Senior Bowl, so there will be no excuses not for HBCU players to be seen and hopefully this year get drafted like there were none in 2021. But the bottom line is, what happens if suddenly the Power 5 conferences start realizing that these players no longer want to play at, say, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, or Michigan, and would much rather be at places like Jackson State, Florida A&M, Southern University, or Grambling, Alabama State, Alabama A&M, Prairie View, you get it. Who's to say they don't start wielding their power of manipulation? Hey, look, what are those schools doing down there to get all those boys to come in here and play for them? Some might say. And then what happens? Do they start using words like compliance, improper benefits, recruiting violations to stem the tide of what is going on? Whatever the case is, Coach Prime, keep doing your thing, because the shine that you're bringing on Jackson State is trickling down to the entire HBCU football landscape, both in terms of television eyeballs, over 2.5 million for the Celebration Bowl, and consider that the college football playoffs ratings were absolutely down because people are tired of seeing Alabama in what amounts to the Crimson Tide Invitational to determine the national championship. So keep doing your thing, Coach Prime and black coaches. But remember, keep somebody watching your back on this side and on that side, because you never know what those 4 letters in Indianapolis have planned for you in the world of compliance. Remember, you can find me, Mark Gray, that's Mark with a K, Gray with an A, at The Sports Proof, all over the place in cyberspace. That's computers, smartphone, tablet, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and from twerk-free TikTok. Too old to be doing that. Something might slip, may not be able to put it back in place. Anyway, I'm Mark Gray. Thanks for hanging out with you. And as always, I look forward to catch up with you sometime around the HBCU Sports Nation.